in our nation in recent days, including Ahmaud Arbery down in Georgia. Now, we know that that case did not involve the use of force when it came to police, but there were questions in regards to how that case was investigated, or some feel the lack of an investigation, given the fact that there was video in that case. And when we talk about video, there's also a lot of hurt when it comes to the George Floyd case, because we saw video of what happened in that case, and we saw video from not just one angle but multiple angles. And for a lot of Americans, it was very hurtful, because what led to Mr. Floyd's death was captured on camera. There were bystanders who tried to get the police officer to take his knee off Mr. Floyd's neck. And a lot of people basically said that this happened in plain sight with cameras rolling while people were advocating for Mr. Floyd. And a lot of demonstrators feel that that still was not enough. And so that's why you have this level of frustration and hurt here. And I am being asked to send it back to you.
Yeah,
right,
Jeff is in downtown.
you.
Jeff is in downtown. Let's go now to Christy Fajardo, who's in Santa Monica. Christy, tell us what you're seeing on the ground where you are.
Well, since you last came out to me, police have moved the protesters, or what's left of them, another half block or so. We're now at 6 in Colorado. They just told them that if they did not leave, they would be arrested. And they seem to accept that outcome, because as you can see, some of the protesters are being arrested now. They're not resisting. They are being handcuffed. They are being led away as police try to clear what's left of the crowd here. Now, some, when they were given that order, did voluntarily leave. About 10 of them instead chose to form a human chain. But again, as police officers went in to make the arrests, they did not resist. And that is the latest from here. You can see some of them still have their hands up as police are approaching them, making more arrests as we speak. Others are there on the corner. It looks like police are moving in also to make those arrests. But at least, from what we can tell now, no one is resisting as they're being taken into custody. Let's send it back to you.
Yeah, Christy, thank you so much. That is Christy Fajardo in Santa Monica. Just to recap what's happened there in Santa Monica. Of course, LA County's a curfew of 6 to 6, at 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. We're 42 minutes into it at this point in time. In Santa Monica, there has been looting. There's a looting of a van store and an athletic shoe store, parts of the Santa Monica Mall or Santa Monica Place. A couple of squad cars have been set on fire there as well. And this is day 5, another violent day in LA as these protests continue. Now, on Monday, George Floyd was killed. Wednesday, those peaceful protests began here in Los Angeles, mostly in downtown. Thursday, those protests were again peaceful, but led to the blocking of 101 downtown. And then Friday, when we were on the air, we actually saw the first violence began, the looting on Friday night in downtown. That is also the day that Derek Chauvin, the Minneapolis police officer, was arrested and charged with third-degree murder. And on Saturday, the hot spots were the Fairfax District, Melrose Street, Beverly Center, and those areas, and also Beverly Hills as well. 400 people arrested. A police officer, about 4 of them, we understand, were injured. One officer was hit with a brick and fractured his skull. Dozens of police cars were burned. Again, more than 400 people arrested for looting and for other crimes as well. Saturday, dozens of police cars burned, and then today led to that curfew. I'm Jeff Vaughn, joined now by Susie Suh. This is KCAL 9 and our continuing coverage of the protest of George Floyd.
And we really got to give it to our colleagues, Sarah Donchie and Chris Holmstrom, who have been with you for hours now, up to more than 4.5 hours, giving you these dramatic pictures, bringing you the live reports from reporters, as well as narrating everything that's been happening today. As Jeff mentioned, this is right now in Santa Monica. This is a place where things started peaceful today, as it has been for other cities. Some protests started peaceful and stayed peaceful, and we certainly want to emphasize that tonight, that not all protesters are doing the looting and the violence, and we want to definitely emphasize that. Many protesters started to bash in windows of stores, though, and breaking into businesses and looting along the 3rd Street Promenade as well as the Santa Monica Place. One store that I saw today was a Louis Vuitton store being hit. Sheriff Alex Villanueva called in SWAT to aid his deputies in Santa Monica, as well as the National Guard also in place, ready to help out law enforcement there as well. We saw a van store, as you're looking at right now on the right side of your screen, being looted. Many people walking in there, walking out with shoe boxes. Shoe Palace was also looted today and set on fire. We saw tear gas starting at about 4 p.m. to disperse the crowds there, and firing less than lethal weapons, of course, when people started throwing things at the deputies out there. Off-ramps to Santa Monica off the 10 freeway have been closed throughout the day, many leading into the city as people, of course, or as law enforcement, they don't want people who don't belong there, who don't need to be there today, there. As you can see from scenes like this, a car on fire, we don't want people who are not in the middle of this to get in the middle of this. So they are sending their warnings out in advance tonight. And of course, in Santa Monica, it was supposed to be a later curfew, but that was actually moved up 2 hours ahead of time as soon as law enforcement saw that things were getting out of hand.
So live pictures here of another car that has been set on fire. And Susie, you mentioned that members of the National Guard are here, and that's something different from yesterday. We all saw the looting that was going on. You mentioned Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills, the Grove as well, the city's premier dining retail centers. They're staggering today. Several stores looted. National Guard troops deployed in the streets, and an entire police department mobilized for the first time in 25 years.
Yeah, since the riots of 1992,
yes,
which is so dramatic to even think about.
And you know, it's interesting when you bring up those riots of 1992, when we're talking to people that have been here and witnessed that, and they believe that we've gone and surpassed the violence of that with these protests for a fifth day because of the looting, because of the injuries, because of the cars and the property damage. A lot of people have said that this is bigger and more widespread than 1992 for sure. 500 members of the National Guard here, Susie, but I'm told they will not be making any arrests. They're just going to be placed in certain, I don't think they're going to tell us where these places are, but used as a security force. There are some high target areas, if you will. We know LAPD headquarters has been a place where marchers have gathered, other police departments and City Hall as well.
City Halls, yeah.
Yeah, and so I think those, you'll see those troops with the National Guard placed at those what they call high priority places.
Yeah, this is a live picture from Sky 9 tonight looking down onto Santa Monica. This is 11th and Broadway where a car has been set on fire. I don't know if that was a police car initially. I can't tell from the front nor back of it because obviously it's on fire right now. But on the left side of your screen is some people who have been detained as a result of this, not the specific fire, I'm not sure, but in Santa Monica for doing something we don't know. But
yeah.
Please.
I was going to say that at this point in time, people can be detained now for breaking curfew.
Sure.
And so if we see somebody on the curb, it could be for looting, it could be for throwing something at a police officer, or it could be for something as simple now as that curfew, which is now in effect going on almost 50 minutes. That's at 6 o'clock and goes until 6 a.m. And Susie, my understanding is that if you are out and about and you're somebody that's seen on the streets, they can pull you over and ask what you're doing.
That's right. And like you mentioned, they are subject to arrest if they do not obey this rule right now, this declaration. And this is happening in various cities, not only in LA County. LA County obviously joining city's curfew enforcement from last night. The city started it last night at 8 p.m. But now the LA County's curfew is going to supersede that from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. in LA County. Beverly Hills, they actually enacted a business district curfew from 1 p.m. to 5:30 a.m. after seeing the looting that they saw yesterday along Rodeo Drive. There's a citywide Beverly Hills curfew happening from 4 p.m. to 5:30 a.m. Also in Santa Monica, as I mentioned, moved up because of the violence and unrest there. Culver City, Pasadena, also starting 8 p.m. tonight. West Hollywood, Long Beach, Torrance. So many cities taking it upon themselves to enact these curfews just to make sure that people are safe.
You know, yesterday, Susie, the hot spots appeared to be the Fairfax District, Melrose, all along Melrose and Highland, Beverly Center, Beverly Hills as well. And today we can tell you the hot spots right now as we see them at this moment. Coming up on 10 minutes before 7 o'clock here on this Sunday night. They are Santa Monica, where, Susie, we have witnessed people looting.
Yeah.
We've also seen Long Beach at the Pike, squad cars set on fire there. And I believe Santa Ana has been heating up a little bit as well. We know that Greg Mills is en route to Santa Ana because we're getting some reports that there might be some situations going on there related to some violence related to the protests. So we'll continue to get that information as soon as we get it.
Yeah, and just as you're talking about Santa Ana, Jeff, last night an unlawful assembly was declared last night at around 9 o'clock in that city. when some protesters started throwing bottles and fireworks at officers. And that's why curfew there has been enacted as well, 10 p.m. to 5:30 a.m. in the city of Santa Ana.
I guess we could say, downtown was the early part of these protests, and that was kind of the place that these protesters chose. And of course, that was for City Hall. They were going up and down along Spring Street, City Hall, LAPD, and that has branched out. Of course, yesterday it seemed to get a lot more widespread, and even more so today when you factor Orange County is once again into play, if you will. Long Beach, Santa Monica, all the way up to Beverly Hills. It has become wider over the days. This is now day 5.
Yeah, and Jeff, you and I started watching this on Friday when this all started in downtown LA. The looting started late on Friday night. That was what you called the sort of the epicenter of the looting and the violence. And now it has since spread, as you mentioned, to the Colfax district. I mean, to all these different areas that we didn't know this was going to happen. And that's another reason why law enforcement is enacting these curfews, because they don't know what's going to happen. They don't know where these protesters are going to be next. And as Sheriff Alex Villanueva mentioned today, he and his department, they want to stay ahead of these protesters who are doing violent things. We shouldn't say for all protesters out there, because many of them are staying peaceful. But for those protesters who choose to do violent things, who choose to loot, they want to stay ahead of them.
The vast majority are peaceful protesters. And you mentioned that Friday night. We believe we witnessed the first act of violence was the looting of the 6th Street Market, which is a liquor store there on 6th Street. Let's go to Christy Fajardo. She's in Santa Monica, and these are the pictures you see here now. So, Christy, it appears they're starting to detain people.
They have actually, those appear to be among the last of the protesters. They did give them an order a short while ago, told them if they didn't leave, they would be arrested. They chose to stay. Some of them, about 10 or so, actually formed a human chain, and they allowed themselves to be arrested. None resisted. It was very peaceful. One girl actually had flowers in her hand. She came and she put them down. She sat down, and she was in tears, and she put her hands behind her back. And police put those zip tie handcuffs on her and led her away. And as you can see, they're leading away another protester now as we speak. So at least at this spot where we are, which is 6th and Colorado, police have managed to clear out the remaining protesters. Another one there being arrested. You can see they're not resisting. A short while ago, some of them just had their hands up. And now we're just watching as police take them away one by one. It appears they've made the choice to be arrested as an act of civil disobedience. But where we are right here, it has all been very peaceful. They are going along with police. There's another man now being arrested there behind us. You can see he just walked off the step with his hands behind his back and allowed himself to be handcuffed. And now he too is being led away. So that is the scene right now here at 6th and Colorado. Let's send it back to you.
All right, Christy, thank you very much. And we want to also talk about what was happening on the right side of your screen while Christy was talking about someone being detained. We also saw a group of protesters running in one direction. And as you can see here in that shot right now, firefighters putting out a car fire. I believe that was the one at 11th and Broadway that we were watching burn for so long. But these are, and this is not isolated to this one area, obviously. Many buildings and businesses, unfortunately, and cars being set on fire, not only police cars, lots of vandalism happening throughout LA. It's a very sad sight to see, especially, Jeff, when you know a lot of these businesses are just starting, barely starting to reopen again and hopefully have some sort of business happening. And this weekend, unfortunately, was the wrong weekend. You
know, as bad as coronavirus is and was for business owners, a curfew is worse because those restaurants, all those businesses were able to do carry out, limited bit of business.
Sure,
and with a curfew, and with a curfew, that's it. They must close. So on the first weekend where you're really trying to get as much as you can possibly to reopen, and people practice social distancing, and Ventura County is having, dining in restaurants now, same here with social distancing, and you're starting to get that traction and that momentum, and then it's stalled by something like this, the looting and the criminal behavior, and those who are not there to peacefully protest.
Yeah, LAPD tweeted that nearly 400 arrests were made last night related to the protest, charges including burglary, looting, vandalism, failure to disperse, felony possession of a gun, and curfew violations. and LAPD officers who were injured overnight. They had some broken bones, fractured skulls. So this is something that they want to protect their own, but they obviously want to protect the public too, in a very delicate situation, because they also want to let those protesters who want to have a voice, let them have a voice. They want to allow that, but it's hard when, you know, the few who want to go and loot and break into stores and vandalize buildings, they ruin it for them.
I don't know what's going on here on the left side of your screen, but that is live, and it appears that police have arrived at this location. And there is a red cross on the outside, so I don't know if that's some sort of medical facility or something like that. But here they're getting ready to push people out of a foyer area, and that is a less than lethal weapon that police officer has. This is Santa Monica. We would assume that that's Santa Monica police. I'm not sure what kind of facility that is. It almost looks like it's not even open for business.
Yeah.
It looks a little in disrepair. So maybe they're just hanging out there in the corner, but nonetheless, it appears that they kind of moved him out of there and moved him down the street. And again, it appears to me, as we're got in the seat just about a half hour now, Susie, that we see those crowds starting to disperse a little bit. They're being successful in getting the people to move and disperse, and now that curfew is in effect, they can get people to go home. Not that everybody will, but it appears now there's a little bit of an upper hand that the police are getting on some of these violent protesters.
But many of these protesters know that, you know, sometimes they sit there or stand there not obeying the rules or, you know, going against the declaration of the curfew, then they will be arrested. And I think they do that knowing so, and they're arrested.
Back to the left side of your screen, that's again, you see police officers that are kind of shaking people out of doorways and stuff. You know what's interesting? We were watching yesterday what was going on in the Melrose area, kind of Highland and Melrose, and that's a neighborhood. Mozza Pizza's right there. We understand that Melrose Mac was heavily looted. We saw people driving up and going inside the store and then coming right back out and filling up cars and taking off. And that's all surrounded by neighborhoods. There were reports of looters and people going into the neighborhoods and tagging some homes. And so this is extended beyond just business districts. I don't think that anybody has had a home invasion, anybody has entered anybody's home that we've known of. But when you get to these mixes of these business and residential areas, the people that want to do harm are spilling out into these residential areas. And of course, a lot of people are scared at that. And we're seeing some of the graffiti and the tagging and the screaming and the yelling going on in some of those residential areas that to the right angle of these places.
Yeah, and again, it's so important to emphasize that this is not the behavior of all the protesters that we have seen out there. You know, as much as we have seen the looting and the violence, we also saw some touching pictures this morning, video of people getting together from the community and actually bringing out brooms and trying to sweep up from the night before the mess that was made out there, really showing that they care about the community. They don't want to do this against their community, and these are people who are coming in and going against the main agenda that they want to get out there. If it is in the case of police brutality, that's what they want, the message that they want to get out there, but oftentimes that's marred by the looting and the violence.
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, it's interesting. I saw some today. There was some attempted looting at an REI in Santa Monica. Now, they were successfully able to get in some other locations, but two people stood in front of that REI store with a sign saying simply "Stop the Violence."
Yeah,
and they were able to thwart those people from trying to get in. I think one person was trying to use the end of a skateboard to gain entry into the main front doors, the double doors of the REI, and they were able to stop them. So we have good Samaritans that are trying to stop this as best they can and putting their health and their wellness and their lives and maybe on the line to do some of this. You know, Susie, you mentioned the police chief. I just want to say this. Los Angeles Police Chief Michael Moore earlier in the week issued a YouTube video saying that he welcomed peaceful protests, but then he spoke yesterday, Saturday, from the ransacked Nordstrom store at the Grove. He had to say that this is not the solution. We haven't given up on LA, and LA shouldn't give up on itself. I need all of LA to step up right now and to be part of the solution.
And the LA County Sheriff's Department tweeting tonight, "We are all grieving the injustice of George Floyd, but smashing windows, stealing, and beating people is not the solution."
I was going to take a look at these live pictures here. I believe that would be on the left side would be Santa Monica. We do have quite a bit of team coverage. We have Brittany Hopper in Long Beach. Desmond Shaw in Sky 9. This is also, of course, airing live on CBS 2, so Sky 2 as well. Santa Monica, Christy Fajardo is on the ground there. In downtown is our reporter Jeff Nguyen, who's been giving us updates throughout the day as well. And Greg Mills, as we understand, is en route to Santa Ana and the Orange County area because we've heard some reports of some violence of some sort going on down there. So we're going to get them down there as soon as we can to figure out what's going on.
And not every protest has turned violent today. We also watched in Huntington Beach as you're joining us live here on CBS 2, simulcasting on KCAL 9 and streaming live on CBSN Los Angeles at the 7 o'clock hour now. Joining you alongside Jeff Vaughn, I'm Susie Suh. There was a protest in